So we're here to talk about the holidays. Okay. Sounds good. And, kind of talk about where we are with faith. It's been in religion and the holidays, it's been a very fluid time. So much change. At Lake Drive Books, we have a book called Hope in the 2020s. It's a collection of essays that's really about how we find hope in this time that we're in, and it lists all the reasons why it's a challenging time. You were talking about it just a moment ago, David, in terms of the pandemic, politics, wars going on, some pretty unsettling times. And even in your tweet yesterday or so, David, you mentioned that you're asking where people are right now, how are they feeling right now? And it's true, I think, when we connect with our spirituality, that those images and those feelings, they're there, whether they're under the surface, or whether they come right out. And sometimes I can even think of moments in the past where I'd show up for a midnight service at a church on Christmas Eve, and the emotion would just be so strong there, and I wonder, where is this coming from? But some of us don't have those same connections that we used to have. We aren't going to that same midnight church service on Christmas Eve, or maybe we are, but we approach it very differently. So that's what we're here. That's what we're here to talk about. I don't want to get into like a lot of formal introductions here, because it's just us four or five. But maybe the first thing to do is just hear a little bit from each of you, David and Sarah, as to like where you are with just situate yourself a little bit. You don't have to say the whole philosophical thing, but just sort of situate where you are, spiritually, physically, religiously, what your day job is, and maybe one thing about the holidays, if that makes sense. I know I bit off a lot there.
I'll try to go first. I'll see if I can keep all that straight. So physically, I'm in Spokane, Washington. I am pursuing writing more and more. I've really enjoyed tapping into this new side of myself and my skills, but I am a skilled physical therapist. And so I work part-time in that regard at an assisted living facility, which is not where I spent most of my career. I had been in outpatient orthopedics doing a lot of pain and post-op stuff. But I've really enjoyed, I've been now at this assisted living place for about 2 years, and all my patients are end of the road. They're all in their 90s. I have a gal who's 103, and that has been a real gift. And I've really enjoyed working with people who have lived a whole life and are coming to the end and know it and are very self-aware most of the time, unless they have bad dementia, which a good amount do. I don't know, just being around that perspective, I think, has been really healthy for me as a younger person. I'm 38, and so I think it's been a gift to keep that perspective that life is really just this blip of time and it will come to an end. I think that, coupled with I am now an agnostic atheist, so highly doubtful that there's a higher being in charge of all of this, but open to mystery and the unknown, and humble enough to admit I don't know for sure. And so I think working with the older folks, coupled with my newer perspective that there's no grand scheme of things, has been really motivating for me to analyze my life. What am I doing? Is this what I want? How am I spending this precious time that I have? So it's been a real treat working there, and I've enjoyed that a lot. And then, go ahead, David.
Yeah. So when did you start writing those, Sarah?
So I've been writing for a long time, but never with the intention of publishing it. It was always just personal. But I've always enjoyed writing and had a strong journal practice. And I did some personal blogging starting when my daughter was born. When I had my oldest, I could sense very quickly that my identity could get completely flooded by becoming a mom. And so I started a blog as a way to cling to my personhood and realize I'm still a whole person with thoughts on politics and religion and all of it. So I was writing a little bit publicly there for the last 7 years. And then when I had my kind of big schism and crisis of faith, so to speak, I tried to blog about it, and there was just too much to say. And that was kind of the origin of the book. I thought I could fill a whole book with why I am where I am now and what I want to do, how I want to redefine my identity and discover who I am and live next, looking forward. So that's kind of what started the book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're a good writer for sure. I really enjoyed the book. You sent it to me and I was able to endorse it for you. But yeah, you're a really good writer. It was the kind of a book you can't put down. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
And that's why we're publishing it at Lake Drive, because it it's a firm belief of telling these stories. In publishing, there's a thing where it's like, well, not another memoir, not another story from someone. You usually have to be famous to get a memoir and for it to work. We're not all Michelle Obama, but at the same time, though, your story has uniqueness to it. You write it really well, and not everybody is able to do that. And I think there's some of your uniqueness, Sarah, and I won't dwell on this, and I'd like to get to you, David, is just how, you found a fair amount of confidence, and even on the other side of that, some joy, in finding new things to look at, new ways to experience and perceive and understand the world around you, that I think is some of the hardest work that we're all doing. And that's one of the reasons why as publisher of Lake Drive Books, I really wanted to publish it. You're as a one person, you've found some of those, you're starting to find those answers, and it's good for us all to sort of follow along.
Mm-hmm.
David, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, well, if I could just say, I think what's important
Sure.
about like Sarah's son, I came out with a kind of a memoir a few years ago called Questions Are the Answer, where and I'm not, I wondered why they wanted a memoir from little old me, but I think what's important about these stories is that it's normalizing, I think, a huge thing that's happening in the world. And that's, a lot of people are leaving the church, questioning their beliefs, their faith and all this kind of a thing. And it's become more public. And I appreciate Sarah's story because it helps to normalize something that should be normal, that this should be normal, in my opinion. This whole deconstruction thing or questioning your beliefs. I mean, this isn't new. This has been going on ever since the beginning of time. Mm-hmm. But now that people are more open about it, and people are being attacked for it, I think stories like Sarah's helps to normalize it and help people recognize, this isn't like backsliding. This is actual like personal. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why Sarah's story is so important. Aside from the fact that it's well written and interesting, but yeah, about me, I'm, nobody knows who David Hayward is, but more people know who NakedPastor is. And I've been running the NakedPastor blog since about 2005. And it was in 2006, I think, I drew my first cartoon as an experiment, and it took off. And so I decided to challenge myself to draw a cartoon every day until I ran out of ideas. And I thought I might last a month, but here I am 18 years later, still drawing cartoons.
Every day?
Every day. Yeah. And, there's some good ones and some really bad ones, but yeah, I'm still drawing every day. But I've been an artist my whole life. Like, I grew up in a home where my dad painted on the side and, things like that. So I've been around art my whole life, and I can't remember ever not drawing or painting and so on. So, and I have artwork everywhere, paintings and stuff, but cartooning was a new venture for me. And I was doing this while I was a pastor. I'd been ordained and, been to seminary and all that kind of thing, and jumped through all the religious hoops. And I'd served as a pastor, local churches, for about 30 years. And then in 2010, I decided the only way I could personally grow spiritually was by leaving the organization, the institution of the church, the ministry. So I did that, and I was right. I was able to continue growing, and it's been 13 years now, but I decided to see if I could make Naked Pastor a full-time gig, and it's worked out. That's what I do. That's my day job and my night job. Yeah.
Talk about that. You just said you put that in a really good way. How in order for you to grow, you felt like you had to leave the church.
Well, this is what's happening. This is what we're talking about.
Mhm.
This is what happened to Sarah. This is what happened to me. The problem, like, it used to be that if you were in the church, or any kind of religion for that matter, I think questioning your beliefs is natural. It should be allowed. It should be a part of any faith or religion, is that you should be allowed to question. I mean, seriously, not like, oh, was it, creation really 6 days, or, this kind of thing. I think really serious questions like, is there a God? Was Jesus, divine, or was there even a Jesus? These kinds of questions, right? And so when we start questioning our beliefs, it used to be you either had to be quiet, or if you did speak up, you were kicked out, disciplined in some way. But now that people are it's cool to be open, more expressive, and so people are questioning their beliefs out loud, and so they're too faced with this choice. Either I stay and deal with this, or be quiet, or leave. I think the church is really great at carrying people along in their spiritual growth until they reach a kind of a spiritual adolescence, when they start questioning their teachers and the police and their parents. And the church is great up to that point. And when the members start questioning, well, why should I believe the Bible? Like, why should I submit to the pastor? Like, why? These kinds of questions. I think if that space was allowed for these kinds of serious questions, I think people would eventually come back around in a more mature adult relationship with their faith, or beliefs. So I think that's what happened to me. Was in 2010. I was a great church. It's just up the road here, and it was I have a great leadership team. Everything was wonderful about it, except people were starting to say, does he believe in God anymore? Kind of thing. And I knew I only had so long, especially when I was getting calls from head office and of concern. And, so I knew my time was up. And sure enough, in 2010, I made the decision to leave and let the church move on in its own way, and for me to move on my own way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting partly because my husband still is a believer, and we have young kids that we had planned on raising in the church. I have mentally, cognitively left, but I go to church still most weeks. And partly that's because my church, I think, is a bit of a unicorn in that it is very open to doubt, and they've done a whole sermon series on doubt, and they're open to science, and they have female pastors and elders, and they would open to all gender and sexual identity. So it's a safe place to be, and it's a place that I think is still showing us a way to be human that I would still support, just from a different motivation, maybe for me now. But being that church where doubt is so okay, and even a lot of the staff, when I had been talking to them leading up to my crisis of faith, where I finally was like, I don't know if I can believe anymore. They all knew it. The staff knew it. I had had multiple meetings with our pastor and some of the other staff, and many of them had been in the same place and had really truthfully entertained those same questions. And I think that's great and healthy, but also our church is pretty small and is not attracting a ton of people. I think that pushback from the establishment is so strong, and our church is not the big one in town, and they don't have the big dollars coming in, and it's kind of one of the more struggling, trying to stay open. And so it's interesting what I think David was kind of saying, what I think would be a really healthy approach to church as of today, and at least in Spokane, which is a pretty conservative community, isn't necessarily a way to thrive and succeed. You might get your doors shut down eventually. doing that. So it's kind of this really tough rock and a hard place, I think, even for the progressive believers who are okay with doubt and are okay with questions. If you go too far, even within the community that's embracing it, it just might not work as a model. So I don't know. It'll be interesting going forward as this deconstruction movement is more popular and more spoken out loud. I feel like we will attract people there who would be drawn to that, but for now, it doesn't seem to be catching on. I don't know. It's been interesting.
Sarah, don't feel you have to divulge this, but can I ask what the denomination is of the church?
They are non-denominational.
Oh, okay.
They used to be loosely associated with some type of Baptist, but they're not even anymore.
Okay.
So just non-denom.
Well, you know, this is what I noticed too. When I was pastoring the church up there, I was quite progressive, and the church we were moving along together. It was great. And but I know, like, we would not grow. We could not grow. I was thinking, this is like, isn't this what people need? Is a place to feel safe and free and to ask their question? No.
Yeah.
I actually had people sit down in front of me in my pastor's study and say, we pay you to tell us what to believe. And because when you read anything like research or polls or anything like that, why do people go to church? They want a sense of certainty. They need that security, that comfort, that security. And you're not going to find that in questions. Although I personally, I think if people are having questions and they are provided a safe space for that and are assured that this is normal and healthy and there's nothing to be afraid of and there's no hell to be punished with and all this kind of thing, that is comforting. But for most people, they seem to want and prefer that certainty, that security, that assurance that they're gonna make it to heaven, and everything's gonna be all right. So yeah, it was an eye-opener for me, providing safe space for people and for people to ask their questions, to grow, to be who they are, to be their authentic selves, LGBTQ plus, everything. No, a lot of people weren't interested. Yeah, it was surprising.
Go ahead.
I sort of carried that back to okay, now the ministry of Jesus is starting to make sense, because he started out with a lot of people and he ended up with his mother. And that's pretty much, it was an eye-opener. Yeah.
Wait a minute. He ended up with his mother. Wait a minute. What do you mean?
Mary at the cross.
Right. Oh, at the cross.
Maybe John was there.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, they were in that very lonely moment together. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's why a secret motivation of my book was to try to take down the binary any chance I got, because I think we all love a binary. And even, sorry, there's a beeping, my daughter's wash. My book tried to really tackle that, because I think it is comforting and it's a easier way of thinking. Cognitively, it's nice to separate things into neat categories. It makes sense and it feels good, but it's never true. It's never real. There's no such thing as black and white. There is gray. There's no such thing as just day and night. There's dawn and dusk. There's always a middle ground and a middle space. And I think when we can acknowledge that and embrace that, it's more real. But it is scarier, because then we don't know, are we right or wrong? And am I on the good side or the bad side? Well, maybe there isn't even questioning that is scary, I think. And a lot of people just aren't willing to go there, understandably.
Yeah, and that's why I think, the church is great at carrying us through infancy and childhood and early adolescence. But when we get to that stage where we have serious questions about authority, power, what is true, then it, generally speaking, drops the ball. Churches like yours, Sarah, they're very rare. And for the reason that you state is that there's no money in it. Like, it's hard to sustain that kind of place. So yeah, man, I sound like a downer.
No, I think it's interesting. To me,
I've never been happier.
I have a sociology and psychology of religion background, graduate level work and studies, and to me, it's as much of an indictment of how we've been able to develop spiritually, where we are on the, on Fowler's stages of faith, for example. And if I look at it psychologically, developmentally, there's a stage where in life where your ideology is very rigid. You care a lot about in groups and out groups, and guess what stage of life that is?
Yeah.
Adolescence, young
Yeah.
adulthood.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to me that it should be a foregone conclusion that the way we structure around our sacred symbols means that we'll only stay at that stage. And if you want to grow, you got to leave. But that's kind of how it is for so many of us. There's a Canadian pastor who I think Sarah, Greta Vosper, is that her name?
Mhm.
Yes, I know Greta.
You folks know her as well. And I think she's still a pastor at a church, but it would be another unusual church like that. She has a wonderful phrase on her website. She's speaking at the Anderson Forum for Theology, I think, in South Carolina in January. And so I noticed, and I was looking into her. She has this wonderful phrase about she'd love to help people learn how to fall in love with being together. And I think that's what that's actually a big community, is a big part of sacred communities, faith communities. It's that sense of singing together, or maybe saying a prayer out loud in unison. We might all sound like the Borg from Star Trek. That's how I always think about it. But it's there's an experience there, that and I think even as we head into the holidays, part of the fear that people have about those who say they're in a deconstruction phase, which is really a growth phase, as we've been talking about it here, is that you're pulling away from them, is that we're not going to be in community anymore. Maybe first, either one of you talk a little bit about, like, how do you see us finding spaces where we can fall in love with being together again? Does that resonate?
Do you have anything, Sarah? I do, but
Yeah, I think I've been fortunate in that I've been able to maintain most of my relationships through all this, and most of them started off at church or in some connection to a small group or something. But because I was part of a pretty progressive group, nobody's too threatened by me saying, I don't know if I buy any of it anymore. They're still willing to talk to me. So I have a group of friends. I think my community is just a self-made. I have to make the effort to do get-togethers with friends. I like to entertain, so we throw parties. I have an annual in February. I call it the Winter Doldrums Party, when it's kind of the boringest time of the year. All the holidays are done, so that's become a bit of a tradition with our good friends. We send the kids off overnight at a nanny's and have nice grown-up time at home. And so I think it maybe takes more effort. Church is such a convenient way to be seeing the same people every week and have that opportunity to have some relationships. But even then, just seeing someone at church on a Sunday can stay very shallow if that's all it is. So no matter what, there needs to be more effort getting put in on some level if you're going to really develop a strong community. So I think, it's on the individual level, just reaching out for those friendships, whether that's many or few, but really making the effort. And then I see ways that you could create that outside of church through interest groups, joining a hiking group or an artists group or a rock climbing group, or, whatever interests you in life. Finding other people with same interests can be a great place to make your own community. What about you, David?
Yeah. I think I've come to conclude that that's the number one pain point for people who are questioning their faith or leaving the church, is the loss of community. And that's something Lisa, my wife and I experienced when we left the church 2010, was a profound sense of loneliness. And I tried to find something to replace that, but nothing worked. I tried different things, but nothing comes close to what the church offers. There are interest groups like, Toastmasters or CrossFit or a book club or whatever, but nothing comes close to church, because what the church does, it's very clever. It's also can be healthy, but they give you everything. I mean, what other group can you walk into and be handed on a platter a whole set of friends, a bunch of babysitters, mechanics, weekly, daily activities, a place to give your money if you want to give your money, a place where you get taught how to live your life, how to raise your kids, how to be married. I mean, everything is provided for you, and you don't have to work, anymore. It's like it's all there. And so when you leave that, it's almost like the church sense of community just infiltrates every aspect of your life, everything. And it's really hard to extricate yourself from that. And I started watching some documentaries and stuff and books on cults. And even though I wasn't a part of a cult, there are cult-like qualities. One of the things I noticed about a lot of the people who'd been in the cult was that they all were literally in tears because they missed the intensity of intimacy that they had in all these communities. And I was like, okay, maybe that's the trade-off. Like maybe that 100% total connection and all your weekly activities being and everything being filled by this one organization, maybe that wasn't so healthy after all. I don't know. So it started getting me asking questions even about that. Since in some churches, I get asked to come speak here and there once in a while, and I have been in these churches who would invite me in the first place. Obviously, hopefully they're somewhat affirming, or they're affirming and progressive and so on. And I found, what, this could work. I mean, this is possible. And where you could really enjoy some community and not being required to sign the dotted line with your blood anywhere, and sing together, be together in silence, eat together, all these things. So, but Lisa and I worked hard at building some friendships. Like we had to start from scratch, and we have some friends, and we're kept busy, and that's what we do now. So it's hard, especially going into Christmas, I guess, for a lot of people, just missing that sense of community that they used to have.
But I think you're also implying there's maybe some spiritual work that needs to be done in experiencing aloneness and void and just sense of self.
Yeah.
There's so maybe our reliance on group connection was overdone, or we needed it too much.
Mm-hmm.
And it prevented us from actually working on ourselves, which is a very big theme in this idea of growth in the deconstruction, is working on ourselves, figuring out who we are, what we want, what we're capable of, all of the parts of us, physically, sexually, whatever they might be. It doesn't have to just be sexual things. We talk about that a lot. That's a big hot button issue, but there's a lot of other aspects, even just questions that we might have. Yeah.
It's interesting. Community's hard. I mean, I try to, the one I babysit the most, or try to moderate the most and facilitate the most, is I have an online community called The Lasting Supper, which is separate. It's not public, but my Instagram account, I really tightly monitor that to make sure there's no bullying going on and things like that. And it's hard. Facilitating community is really hard. I mean, I've known people who have joined like an atheist service, or an agnostic anonymous group, or whatever. And it's hard. They have the same struggles that Christian groups have. And it's just hard having a good, healthy, safe community in any case,
Humans are tricky. We can
we
be
are
wonderful and so helpful and kind, and we can be horrific in the same breath sometimes. I think putting any group of people together, there's potential for beauty or potential for disaster, or both. Again, it's that binary. It's not just good or bad. There's pieces of both in there.
Yeah. And like there's no perfect church. there's only perfect moments. And I think the trick is to get more moments, as many moments as possible, you know? And so that's, I think if we can keep that in mind. For me, the question is, I think if community struggled with this question, how can I be free without violating your freedom? And how can you be free without violating my freedom? And so there's no rule book for that. That has to be negotiated every step of the way, which that's what relationship is. I think that's what community is figuring out how to be free, independent, and to become interdependent rather than codependent or simply dependent. You know, that sort of healthy interdependence of independent individuals, I think, is the goal. So, but that's hard to find communities willing to work on that.
So as we come to the holidays, I think I'm starting to think of like family members who are watching certain, their information is fed in certain ways, and they have certain views, and they think it's even normalized to say certain things. And you're suggesting, David, that they should have the freedom to be who they are and say who they are, but then you should be able to do that as well. It still feels awkward and kind of painful and alienating, I think. I kind of jumped right into it, but to be around Uncle Ron and have to, and that's a caricature, so I apologize, but you know, to kind of be who we are. You don't feel comfortable when someone is saying some of those kinds of things, or saying the kinds of things that are, you know, about this person's politics, about this person's gender, about their race, or about their policies, if it's even that articulate. I mean, do you have an Uncle Ron, Sarah? Maybe he's watching.
I do have those folks for sure. And what my goal is in those get-togethers, and what I strive to do, is to stay curious and to not turn into like preacher mode. And that's really hard for me because, of course, I think what I think is right. I wouldn't think it if I didn't think I was right. And so it's really hard to turn off the desire to convert people. I think that evangelical hold on conversion is still deep in me, and to let people be, which is a gift I've received since leaving the faith, because I don't have someone's eternity hanging over my shoulders. I don't feel responsible. That's been a blessing. So I can truly let people believe what they want, do what they want. It doesn't affect me. I'm not worried about their eternal salvation. So I try to use that and take it through to let people truly be who they are and stay curious about it, and not try to convince them of what I think, but to just ask questions and really get to, well, why do you think that? And haven't you ever met somebody who is gay? Isn't our brother-in-law gay? Or, you know, bring up specific people or specific topics. And I think when you start getting into the details and you make it real, especially if you do have an actual person in your life that you can use as an example, people can be broken out of some of the molds that they're in and the stereotyping. So it's really hard. I get emotional, I'm passionate, I get into stuff. So it's hard for me to tone down the emotional response. But if I can, I try to stay curious and just pursue a few questions. And in that, maybe turn the conversation into something helpful and real. But that's tough to do.
Yeah, when Lisa and I, when our kids started turning into teenagers, Lisa said at one point, I would rather be in relationship with our kids than be right. You know, so, and that was like a revelation to me that, you know, because I know a lot of parents who demanded to be right with their kids, and they've lost their kids, right? They've lost relationship with their kids because they set the ground rules, and, you know, this is what they are, and if you don't, then you're out, kind of thing. And, you know, I kind of grew up in a home like that, and a religious culture like that. So when I go back home, in fact, I'm going this Saturday, I'm going back home, where you know, Fox News is on and all that kind of thing. And
Where's home?
near Toronto,
Mm.
in Canada. And you know, I always remember that what Lisa said. I'd rather be in a relationship than be right. So I carefully negotiate. So it's like rapids in a kayak. I sometimes hit rocks, but sometimes capsize. But it's like navigating those very treacherous waters of relationship when you don't agree, and putting up with stuff, and you know, swallowing my pride. And you know, I've also lost the evangelical fervor or the need to convert people. And I also believe that we're deeply connected to one another, and love is the glue. And so I just keep that in mind. And I have one story where we were all there and they were watching the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, and I said, "What do you think about that, Uncle Dave?" I was like, I'm not going to talk about that.
Mm.
Chicken.
Oh,
So I put up with that for about a minute or two. And then they forgot about it. I forgot about it, you know. So that's what it's like. You're just constantly like, do I want to stand up for what I believe is right, or does it matter right now? And you know, just so navigated those waters. But there are times when I feel I need to say something, and hopefully it's a teachable moment. And so, you know, but it's hard to navigate. And I talk about this a lot because a lot of my followers are, you know, going home for Thanksgiving or going home for Christmas. And it's like they're already fastening their seatbelts, putting on their helmets, because they know they're in for a ride, you know. So it's tough.
yeah, it's almost like what you're saying, Sarah. Try to find real life examples of you know, where you might offer a broader perspective on things. But at the same time, David, it's okay to simply say, let's just table that for now. You know, we're here to enjoy each other, and it's, you know, that would take a lot of unpacking to really talk it through.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I've had family members ask me questions, and it's like, well, that's going to take a little while to really talk it through. And is that, you know, and they ask those questions kind of quickly, as though they're not really intending and realizing how much texture and depth there is to it.
You
Yeah.
can tell. Most of us can tell. We can intuit if the question feels like a trap.
Yeah.
Or they're genuinely curious. Like, and I've had moments when I felt they're trying to trap me and they're trying to get something to nail their accusations and judgments and everything on. And other times when I feel they really want to know, you know. So, you know, if we can intuit what it is and then respond appropriately, I think that makes a big difference.
What would be, and maybe starting with Sarah, let me shift gears a little bit. What would be an awkward moment that you're not looking forward to? For me, I'll just start with me. For me, it's like everybody standing around before the meal and saying prayer, and possibly being asked to say prayer, because I have done that in the past, but not really feeling like I want to participate in that same way, even though I'm there to participate in general.
Yeah, I think, especially since this is a newer place for me to be in, not being fully on board of the real religious significance behind this whole holiday, especially with Christmas. I have a strong commitment to authenticity, so I don't like to say words that I don't mean. So like I'm not going to just, even Christmas carols are hard. I kind of dread that because I love those songs and they're so powerful and beautiful. But there are lyrics that are saying something that I don't agree with half of the time now. And so I feel a lot of inward tension there. Like, do I just sing it? It's just a song, stop over analyzing it. Or do I, no, I'm not going to say words I don't stand by, you know? So that I have a lot of internal conflict on what I'll participate in and what I won't. One thing that I've been trying out is to think of all of the religious piece of this as myth and story, because I'm a reader and I love to read, and I can get a lot of truth out of a story. So if I can, in my own mind, knowing that not everybody else thinks this way, but think of the whole Jesus thing as a story, There are a lot of
there's a lot to that with regard to
Yeah.
Christmas. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, half of it is conjecture and, so if I can lean into the story aspect of it without having to think that this is historical or real, then I'm able to still pull some really, beautiful pieces out of it. So I've tried to do that just mentally for myself to get through it in a way that still feels authentic to me, where I don't feel like I'm faking it. But definitely there's going to be some parts in the family. They pray before all the meals, and I just look down, or I keep an eye on the kids, and just don't really participate that way. But thankfully no one asks me to pray, especially now they all know that would be a mistake.
Yeah. Thank you. David, how about you in terms of, you talked a little bit about it, but like what's a concern or pain point or awkward moment you're not looking forward to?
Yeah, besides, me being seen as woke, too woke and all lefty and all that kind of thing. But I too was very afraid of being called upon to pray. And so I actually did come up with a strategy where what I did was I would say something like, we're thankful for the love that we're sharing around this table. We're thankful for the opportunity that we can be together. We're thankful for this food, etc. Amen. There's no
It too.
I've removed the magical divine, all that kind of thing. I'm not saying that it's I'm not saying that that's not all true. What I'm saying is I said words that I felt I could say with integrity. And nobody noticed, right? But yeah, that the thing for me is my bringing my whole self into sometimes what feels like a hostile environment. And it, like Lisa's even said, I'm being vulnerable right here, but even when Lisa and I have gone together, and she says, you're not yourself when you're at home. That's how I grew up, and yeah, so it's a challenge. I mean, I love my family, and I'm looking forward to going to see them again. I'd last a few days, but yeah, it's a challenge.
What do you, let me start with David and go back to Sarah. What do you look forward to for this holiday season? What's something that moves you or gives you a sense of anticipation?
Well, my dad, he was the boss. He's now in a long-term care facility with dementia. So I've lost him in many ways. Never had him either. But what I look forward to is my mom is she's just a joker. So she's just hilarious, and we watch movies and laugh and have some wine together. And yeah, she's just fun to be around. And my siblings, for the most part, we can have fun. So it's eggshells though there. But yeah, that's what I look forward to, just going and being mostly with my mom and my siblings when it works. Yeah.
Laughter and watching movies.
Yeah, I'm a movie fan. I love watching movies. My mom just loves movies, so we just gorge on movies.
That's cool. Sarah.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to, I have young kids. My kids are 5 and 7. And so Christmas is a big thing right now with Santa. This is our first year doing the Elf on the Shelf. I don't know if they have that in Canada, if that's a thing, but that's taken over our lives. We panic every night. Oh, I didn't set the elf out. We got to get that ready. But so I've really loved the holiday season for seeing it through the eyes of my kids and trying to make a lot of memories for them. I'm very aware that they're now old enough to hold on to these things that we're doing in memories. And like, this is their childhood that we are living in right now. So we do a lot of little traditional things. Downtown Spokane has some holiday events. Today, actually later this evening, we're going to go to, there's a big lake community in Idaho. I'm just close to the border of Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, and they have a cruise to the North Pole where you get on a boat and it takes you across the lake. And I think it's some citizen with they're very, very nice homes on that lake. And so his mansion has been turned into a satellite workshop for Santa, and Santa comes out and talks to all the kids, and there's a fireworks show. It's a whole big thing. So stuff like that, which is a secular event anyway. You know, it's Santa, it's not Jesus. So that's easy to participate in, and just doing fun stuff for my kids and seeing this whole season through their eyes is totally fun and gives me things to look forward to. So yeah, that's been neat.
Cool.
That's awesome. And Sarah, thank you. Good luck with the book.
Yeah.
We're in this together.
Thank you.
And David, do you have a book coming as well? Another one?
Yeah, I have another one. I have 10 so far, so I'm working on my 11th, and this is a children's book, and I have never been more terrified in my life. I thought children's book, I was asked to do a children's book, and I'm like, yeah, sure. I didn't realize what I was getting into.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I look forward to that as a parent. That'll be great.
The feedback will be unvarnished.
Yeah.
NakedPastor, we're writing a children's book.
Yeah,
I know.
maybe we can use that tag.
It'll work out. It'll work
Yeah.
out.
So,
Well, again, great to see you all here. Thank you so much.
thank you
And,
so much.
wishing
Thank
you all a wonderful holiday season.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.